A desperate plea. Zephyr wiped the sweat from his brow, squinting against the harsh glare of the twin suns overhead. He'd been working on the old harvester for hours, coaxing the machine back to life with a combination of skill, determination, and a fair bit of percussive maintenance. Out here on the frontier, you either learn to fix things yourself, or you didn't survive long. He was just about to call it a day when a shadow fell across the arid landscape. Zephyr looked up, shielding his eyes, and felt his jaw drop. A massive alien ship hung in the sky, a sleek, organic-looking craft unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was clearly damaged, trailing smoke and crackling with energy discharges. As he watched, the ship descended towards his outpost, landing with a groan of stressed metal a short distance away. Zephyr approached cautiously, his hand resting on the plasma pistol at his hip. You never knew what you might be dealing with this far out. A hatch opened on the side of the ship, and two figures emerged. They were tall and slender, with iridescent skin and large almond-shaped eyes. One of them, clearly injured, leaned heavily on the other. "Please," the uninjured alien said, its voice musical and strained. "We need your help. Our ship is badly damaged, and our life support systems are failing. You're our only hope." Zephyr hesitated. Getting involved with aliens could be risky, but he couldn't just leave them to die. It went against everything he believed in. "All right," he said, stepping forward. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As he approached the alien ship, Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. Little did he know just how right he was. Unfamiliar territory. Zephyr followed the aliens into their ship, his eyes widening as he took in the foreign environment. The interior was a dizzying blend of organic curves and pulsing technology, like nothing he'd ever encountered. Bioluminescent veins snaked across the walls, providing an eerie, pulsing light. "This way," the lead alien said, guiding Zephyr deeper into the ship. "Our central control nexus is this way." As they moved through the corridors, Zephyr couldn't help but marvel at the advanced tech surrounding him. Back home, he was used to working with clunky, outdated machinery, nothing like the sleek, almost living systems he saw here. They entered a large, circular room dominated by a pulsing, crystalline structure. It was clearly the heart of the ship, but it was flickering erratically, shards of crystal cracking and flaking off. "Our ship is a living entity," the alien explained, seeing Zephyr's astonished expression. "But it's gravely wounded. We were attacked, and the damage is extensive." Zephyr stepped forward, running his hands over the damaged crystal. He could feel the ship's pain, sense its distress. This was unlike any repair job he'd ever taken on. "I'll do my best," he said, looking back at the aliens. "But I'll be honest, this is way outside my usual territory. Your tech is so advanced, I'm not sure my skills will be enough." The alien placed a slender hand on Zephyr's shoulder. "We have faith in you," it said softly. "We've seen the ingenuity of your species. If anyone can help us, it's you." Zephyr took a deep breath, then nodded. "All right, let me grab my tools. We've got work to do." As he set to work assessing the damage, Zephyr couldn't shake the feeling that he was in way over his head. But he'd never been one to back down from a challenge. One way or another, he'd find a way to fix this alien ship, or die trying. Unconventional methods. Hours turned into days as Zephyr worked tirelessly on the alien ship. The damage was extensive, far worse than he'd initially realized. Entire systems needed to be rebuilt from scratch, and the ship's organic components were resistant to his usual repair methods. The alien crew watched him work, their initial wariness slowly giving way to curiosity. They'd never seen someone work with such determination, such creativity. Zephyr used tools and techniques they'd never encountered, jury-rigging solutions out of whatever he had on hand. "What is this?" one of the aliens asked, pointing to a tangle of wires and components Zephyr had just finished installing. Zephyr grinned, wiping a smear of grease from his forehead. "That, my friend, is a Zephyr special. A little bit of human ingenuity to bypass your damaged power conduits. The alien looked dubious. But it's so crude. Surely there's a more elegant solution. Zephyr shrugged. Maybe. But elegant takes time. And right now, time is something we don't have. This'll work, trust me. And work it did. Slowly but surely, the ship began to heal under Zephyr's unorthodox ministrations. Systems that had been dark for days flickered back to life, and the pulsing of the ship's crystalline heart grew stronger. But not everyone was happy with Zephyr's methods. Some of the alien engineers, used to their own ways of doing things, clashed with the human mechanic. "You can't just splice that in there," one of them exclaimed, watching in horror as Zephyr connected two seemingly incompatible components. "It goes against all our protocols." Zephyr just grinned. "Protocols are great when you have the luxury of time and resources. Out here, you learn to make do with what you've got." Despite the tensions, Zephyr could feel the aliens' respect for him growing. They might not always understand his methods, but they couldn't argue with the results. As he fell into his bunk each night, exhausted but satisfied, Zephyr couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He was doing something no human had ever done before, forging a bond with an alien species through the universal language of hard work and determination. But the real test was still to come. Deep in the heart of the ship, a critical system was on the verge of failure. And if it went down, it would take the entire ship with it. Zephyr was in a race against time, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Race against time. The warning klaxon split the air, jolting Zephyr from a fitful sleep. He was on his feet in an instant, his heart pounding. Something was wrong. He raced to the central control nexus, the ship's alarm blaring in his ears. The aliens were already there, their faces taut with fear. "The life support system is failing," one of them said, its voice trembling. "We're losing oxygen." Zephyr pushed his way to the control panel, his eyes scanning the readouts. The alien was right. The system was on the verge of total shutdown, and if it failed, they'd all suffocate within hours. "I thought we fixed this," Zephyr growled, his fingers flying over the controls. "What happened?" "The repairs didn't hold," another alien said. "The damage was too extensive. We need to." But Zephyr wasn't listening. He was already deep in the guts of the system, tracing the fault, his mind racing. This was bad. The life support was tied into every other system on the ship. If it went down, he worked feverishly, trying every trick he knew, but nothing seemed to work. The system was just too far gone. Hours passed, the oxygen growing thinner. The aliens were starting to weaken, their movements growing sluggish. Zephyr could feel the effects too, his head spinning, his vision blurring. But he refused to give up. These aliens had put their trust in him, and he wasn't about to let them down. Not now, not ever. With a last, desperate effort, Zephyr rerouted power from the ship's engines, shunting it into the life support. It was a dangerous move. If it didn't work, it could blow the whole system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a shuddering groan, the life support kicked back into gear. Fresh oxygen flooded the ship, and the aliens let out a collective sigh of relief. Zephyr sagged against the wall, exhausted but triumphant. He'd done it. They were going to make it. But even as he celebrated, a new problem presented itself. The power reroute had damaged the ship's navigational system. They were adrift, lost in the vastness of space. Zephyr looked at the aliens, saw the fear in their eyes. They'd come so far, overcome so much. He wasn't about to let this be the end. "Don't worry," he said, a determined grin spreading across his face. "I've got an idea. It's a little unconventional, but..." The aliens looked at each other, then back at Zephyr. They'd learned to trust this human, to believe in his ability to do the impossible. "We're with you," the leader said, "whatever it takes." Zephyr nodded, then got to work. They had a ship to save, and he wasn't about to let a little thing like being lost in space stop him. Turning point. Zephyr stared at the burnt-out husk of the navigational core, his heart sinking. This was bad. Without the core, they had no way of plotting a course, no way of getting the ship back to civilization. He tried everything: rewiring circuits, reprogramming subroutines, even attempting to build a new core from scratch. But it was no use. The alien technology was just too advanced, too different from anything he'd ever worked with. The aliens were gathered around him, their faces etched with worry. They'd placed their trust in Zephyr, and now it seemed like he'd failed them. "I'm sorry," Zephyr said, his voice heavy with defeat. "I don't know what else to do. Without the nav core." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Without the nav core, they were doomed, destined to drift endlessly through the void of space until their supplies ran out. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Zephyr's mind was racing. There had to be a solution. He refused to believe that this was the end. And then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit him. The human navigational device he'd brought with him from his outpost. It was crude by the alien standards, but it was functional. If he could just find a way to interface it with the ship's systems. Zephyr leaped to his feet, startling the aliens. "I've got it," he exclaimed. "I know how we can fix this." He raced out of the room, leaving the bewildered aliens to follow in his wake. He ran to his quarters, rummaging through his belongings until he found what he was looking for: a small battered device, its screen cracked but still functional. Back in the control nexus, Zephyr set to work, his fingers flying over the device's controls. The aliens watched in astonishment as he dismantled the device, stripping it down to its core components. "What are you doing?" one of them asked, unable to hide their confusion. Zephyr grinned. "I'm doing what humans do best: improvising." With careful precision, he began integrating the components of the human device into the ship's navigational system. It was a delicate process. One wrong move could fry the whole system. Hours passed, the tension on the ship mounting. The aliens paced nervously, their faith in Zephyr warring with their fear of the unknown. And then, with a triumphant shout, Zephyr stepped back. The navigational system hummed to life, its screens glowing with a steady, reassuring light. "We have navigation," Zephyr announced, his face split by a wide grin. "We can go home." The aliens erupted into cheers, their relief palpable. They crowded around Zephyr, expressing their gratitude, their amazement at his achievement. But Zephyr waved off their praise. "It was a team effort," he said. "I couldn't have done it without you." As the ship's engines powered up, ready to carry them back to civilization, Zephyr couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey he'd undertaken. He'd come so far, learned so much, and in the process, he'd forged a bond with these aliens that he knew would last a lifetime. The ship lifted off, soaring into the starry expanse of space, and as it did, Zephyr knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, human and alien, united by the unbreakable bonds of friendship and trust. Bonds forged in crisis. The alien ship touched down on the outskirts of the sprawling intergalactic spaceport, its battered hull gleaming under the light of a foreign sun. Zephyr stood at the view screen, his heart full of a bittersweet mix of pride and sadness. They'd made it. Against all odds, they'd traversed the vast emptiness of space, navigated by a jury-rigged fusion of human and alien technology. The ship was whole once more, its systems humming with health, its living core pulsing with renewed vitality. As the hatch opened and the alien crew prepared to disembark, they each paused to bid Zephyr farewell. Their gratitude was palpable, their respect for the human mechanic evident in every word, every gesture. "We owe you our lives," the captain said, grasping Zephyr's hand in his own slender, iridescent appendage. "You have shown us the true strength and resilience of your species. We will not forget what you've done for us." Zephyr smiled, returning the captain's grasp. "I'm just glad I could help," he said. "You taught me a lot too, you know. About your technology, your way of life, about the importance of trust and cooperation. As he watched the aliens disappear into the bustling spaceport, Zephyr felt a pang of loss. These beings had become more than just clients, more than just friends. They were a part of his life now, a part of his story. But he knew this wasn't the end. The universe was vast, full of endless possibilities. And if there was one thing Zephyr had learned from this experience, it was that the bonds forged in crisis were unbreakable. He thought back to those early days on the alien ship, when everything had seemed so foreign, so impossible. He'd been out of his depth, facing challenges he'd never dreamed of. But he persevered. With grit, determination, and a hefty dose of human ingenuity, he'd found a way. He'd fixed the unfixable, navigated the uncharted. He'd shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit was indomitable. As he turned to leave, ready to embark on his next adventure, Zephyr paused. The alien ship, the vessel that had been his home and his challenge for so long, loomed before him. On a whim, he reached out, placing his hand on the ship's hull. To his surprise, he felt a soft warmth, a gentle pulsing that seemed to echo his own heartbeat. "Thank you," he whispered, his words meant for the ship as much as its crew. "Thank you for reminding me what it means to be human." With that, he turned and walked away, his toolbox slung over his shoulder, his head held high. The universe awaited, full of new challenges, new adventures, and Zephyr was ready to meet them head-on. For he was human, born of a species that had clawed its way from the murky depths of prehistory to the shining vanguard of the stars. A species of dreamers and builders, of explorers and inventors. A species that, when faced with the impossible, simply rolled up its sleeves, grabbed its tools, and got to work. Zephyr smiled, his heart full of hope and determination. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. The universe would never be the same. For it had seen the power of human resilience, the unquenchable fire of the human spirit. And that was a force that could never be underestimated. The end.